And to me, real leadership is being a whole person, leading in all parts of our life, including our family, our community. And now our breathwork community is expanded to the world. So many more playmates that we have. Because I've always said that was really what I was in it for, is to find more playmates, people who like to play changing consciousness that involves the Leela, as it were, of leadership. Leela is a Sanskrit word, I believe, which means divine play. And so the universe throws curveballs at us. And I'd like to believe that it's never more than we can handle, although it seems that way. It always looks like, oh, in fact, as you mentioned it, just today, before we got on the call, I was preparing for a one of our biggest trainings of the year, starting in 2 days. And things were coming in. People were, oh, my mother's in the ER, and oh, I can't do this, and oh, I need. Having done this for many years, I know before you do a breathwork training or before you do something that's going to expand your consciousness and challenge your mettle, as it were, things come up. And so I'm a seasoned trainer. I take that in stride. Well, today it seemed like it was extraordinary. Like I had never experienced so many changes. I have a roster and it's changed at least 4 times today, 3 times yesterday, 3 times a day. It's like, and I was beginning to get into little like, oh, woe is me. And then all of a sudden the hit upside the head. Well, look at my fellow breath worker in the Mideast. He's dealing with, are his family going to survive? And here I'm so worried, my little tempest in a teacup, of who's going to straighten out my roster and who's going to show up and all that sort of stuff. So it's like, okay, chill, Jim, take a breath. I say we, my wife and I, were all about the task of personal growth because I had gone through formal psychology training, and that lasted, after I got my doctorate, 1 day. And then we jumped on a plane, went to Africa, and I said, I'm not going to spend my life being a talking head in a box. I need something that involves the body. We went to Africa. And in the desert of Africa, there appeared a book in this little encampment that we were, about the change in consciousness that was going on the West Coast of the United States. And Stephen Gaskin, he called it Monday Night Class. And I said, wow, okay, this is what I want to get back to. And so we came back to the United States and we were headed to California. That's where we were going to go. But alas, didn't happen. We carried little guests with us inside our body and we had to hunker down in the Midwest. And I said, okay, we just invited other teachers from New York in, and one of the teachers was a chief student of Chen Men Cheng, who brought Tai Chi to the Western world. And he said, I've learned about breathwork. Well, it was called rebirthing at the time. And so we had just bought a house and we had a 3rd floor designated to traveling gurus. And so we invited the first breathworkers to come here, and kapowie. Whoa, okay. This really got my attention. Well, I was a wise guy in those days and still am probably. And I said, well, yeah, this is fantastic, but I'll probably be on to other things, bigger and better. And well, I've never found anything bigger or better than the breath. It has no ceiling and it has no floor to it. It will go as far as you want to go. So I immediately then went to every training that I could go to. First one was during Mardi Gras in New Orleans with Leonard Orr. We brought our 2 kids, we brought everyone, and he totally welcomed and invited us all in. I was hooked. And so within 2 years, I went for the top certification at that time in rebirthing, as it were. And at that time, you had to get the signature of every certified rebirther. There were 11 others at the time, and I got the signature of 10 of them. And the last one wasn't so sure. And so here we are at the final ceremony of inaugurating who is going to be the new, or one of the new, there were actually 3 of them at that time, certified breath workers. And I still hadn't gotten approval. And so I had to say to myself, well, I've got to admit, this is my calling. This is what I'm going to do, whether I get this certification or not. And even though I'd spent all the money to go there and I'd done everything, dragged my family along again, my body was starting to feel like it was breaking down, you know. So I just had to, in essence, what Leonard Orr says, I had to certify myself. And I did that internally. And as soon as I did, I got the nod from the Sandra Ray, who it was. And so that was like a real affirmation for me and the Spirit of Breath that real certification comes from the inside. Others can recognize it or not, but that's their business, you know. And the labels and the certificates and all that mean nothing unless you are stepping into and owning your calling. Doesn't mean you're the greatest, doesn't mean you know everything, but it just means that you are in it with your whole heart. I mean, there's doubts. The mind is always, the little disc jockey is always saying, oh, you could have done better at this, and you don't know all of that, and you blah, 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 blah. It's part of the default mode network that we have. So that was the first and probably the most primary lesson. That had to be the primary inauguration for me into what it is to be a true breath worker, is it has to come from the inside. I mean, because I had several challenges in that certification training. You had to stand up in front of everyone that was at the training. And this was like 100 people or so. And you, each one of them, you had to go and say eye to eye to that person, I'm a certified breath worker. And so you had to have that certitude and that. And I did that to one woman, and she looked at me and she says, are you kidding? You can't even breathe. Look at this frozen chest. And, you know, as I went, okay, next, go on. And it was then, if anyone, and you stood up and any one of the people in the whole assemblage objected to your being a certified breath worker, you were done. I was part of the rebellion, however, that said, no, this is getting a little too exclusive. You know, we're going to limit the growth of breathwork if we do this, or rebirthing at the time, if we do this. Leonard had an organization called Theta International. It was an organization that set up to spread the one-year seminar, as it was called, which was creating communities around the country and well, and around the world. And so they would take the best teachers and we'd create a teaching circuit for them. So they would go to Boston, New York, Pittsburgh. They would travel in the circuit and teaching what was called the one-year seminar. And the one-year seminar was a commitment to spend a year immersing yourself in the highest quality thoughts and breath work. Well, rebirthing, I should say at the time. And so it was one Sunday a month for 12 hours. And you'd spend 12 hours. And then there was a mid-month meeting where you would do breath work. So there was spiritual psychology, body mastery was the one I put in it, prosperity, and different topics. And I hosted that in my city, and I brought all these teachers in, Leonard and Sandra and Bobby Birdsell and Phil Lout, who wrote Money is My Friend. And after a year of doing that, I was in the basement sanding a table, and bong, it's like the inspiration came to me. Well, it's time for you, Jim. You should be teaching these rather than just inviting all of these great leaders in. What? Yes. And so there was an old paper bag and a stub of a pencil, and I wrote down 12 seminars. And next year I was teaching them. It was like, bong. And so you wanted to know the ups and downs of it. The first time I tried teaching them, I put flyers out to everyone, friends, family, enemies, whoever. I would said, come to this seminar, and opening day, the first seminar, no one showed up except one person. And this was a gentleman that I had helped when I was a psychologist in a mental hospital. And he didn't know what it was, but he just came there because he thought I was a nice guy. And so there was another gut check in my life. Here, I put it out there. I said, okay, I want to be a teacher. Look at these wonderful things I'm teaching. Come on in. Well, no one showed up. Another gut check. You really want to do this and suffer this humiliation continuously? And the answer was, I guess so. Yep, I'm in. So it taught me things about how to advertise. And you don't put out flyers and people come. You got to make a personal relationship. You got to contact with them. You got to network. All right, next year, bingo, full house. And it continued on after that until I had created not just a one-year seminar, but a one-year program. And we met 7 times a month, 1 Sunday, 3 Monday evenings, and 3 Saturday mornings for 6 months. And then the students said, that was great. We want to do it again. I said, no way. If I have to teach this to you again, it means you didn't get it. So I said, here's what I will do. I'll create a second year. So first year, you were a student. Now the second year is about being a leader. So I created a spiritual leadership program. And that was 8 months. Sure enough, same thing. After 8 months, they said, we're just getting started. Part of that was that they had to do public seminars. They had to put themselves out as a leader. This shied many people away. It's like, oh, we're not doing that. We just want to hear someone else preach. But okay, they had to be out there presenting themselves, and they still wouldn't quit. They still said, we want more. I said, okay, this is it. The final year of this school is the 3rd year, and it will be called the apprenticeship program. And it means now you have to apprentice directly to spirit. You have to turn over your life and be a full-fledged lifer in this work. That was a 9-month program. And after that, the only way you could stay on was by being a teacher in the school or assistant. And that grew. And so we had the School of Spiritual Psychology, which I later called the School of Integrative Psychology, which went for 33 years until I said, that's pretty intense. I'm teaching 3 years of program, having a personal practice, traveling. I traveled a week every month. Yeah, I had a family. I said, okay, now other people do it. And so many years ago, then I stopped that 3-year program, but I kept training in breathwork. I kept doing seminars, doing breathwork. I always was a little suspicious of someone who got beyond doing breathwork. No, I'm above that now. I don't breathe anymore. I just empower others to do it. So I recorded all those, and I put all those programs on recording, and I have a library of them that can be purchased and so on. But breathwork training has still been my passion. I'm still doing it this week. But last October, my birthday, it felt like, okay, I got to make a decision here. Do I want to keep doing this, recruiting for trainings? And there's a time to hang up the spurs. And I got resounding again, boom, not so easy. It's time for you to support communities being created, not just you got your school and your, and so the next program we did, the first part of this year was having communities in various places, Washington, D.C., Huntsville, Alabama, New Orleans, Rhinelander, Wisconsin. And so I and teachers all contributed to teaching in various communities in order to spawn more teachers in more communities. And so that's where I'm at right now. I'm into supporting communities being spread. It's more like networking rather than the pyramid. One school does it all. And with the GPBA, it's also another effort to support quality training with ethics in breathwork in many communities and countries around the world.